Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm so happy to have you here. How are you? It's been a couple of weeks since I've posted because I have been so exhausted, so flat out with work, but today I am here to talk about all of the books that I read in February, so I really hope you enjoy, and please stick around. If you want to see more from me in the future, please subscribe as well, because I'd love to have you here. So February was pretty busy. I've been super busy on the weekends, but I have managed to find the time to actually read and pick up books, so let's have a chat about them together, and let's chat about the books that I loved and also didn't love. I'm going to put this down. Okay, so I have all of my books beside me. They are in this really big pile. So we're just gonna... Well, they were in a really big pile. Yeah. We're going to talk about them anyway. So we're going to start with the two paperbacks that I read this month. So the first book I read in February was Spiral. Now Spiral is by Bal Cabra and it is the second book in the series that started with Collide. This is about a ballerina and a hockey player. So he is very much caught up in sort of the spotlight of being a hockey player, and he sees it a little bit too much. And Sage, our inspiring ballerina, she really wants to make a principal role. She wants bigger roles, and she's found out very quickly that a lot of the auditions and a lot of the parts are being given to people who have more popularity than her, maybe on social media. So they decide to fake date, and it'll help her get her popularity up. It'll help him in his ways of paparazzi. They'll maybe leave him alone a little bit since he has a girlfriend, and it's just perfect. It's perfect. It's all I ever wanted from a sequel to Collide, because Collide was probably one of my favorite books at the end of last year, and I'm so excited I finally picked up the sequel, so I can't wait to the next one as well. Our second book then is another hockey romance, and that was Pucking Around. So I actually ended up giving Pucking Around a 2-star. Now, it wasn't awful. It's a massive read. Okay, so the front of this book clearly displays this girl and all of her men, right? I did not realise that this was a multiple guy romance novel. I don't know what I thought from the cover, but it wasn't that. So I think I'd made up like my own storyline in his head to be like, this is her brother and this is her brother's boyfriend, and that's not right. She dates all of these guys. So this is about a hockey team called the Jacksonville Rays, and we've got the goalie, one of the star players, and one of the coaches or equipment managers as well, and she is the team doctor, or becomes like the team doctor, physio gal. It was fine. I actually really liked the plot. The first 20% was really good. I loved the way that all the different guys came in and how they all had their own backstories and how they all met her and that sort of thing. And I loved the end of the book, the way that the plot finished, but for sort of the middle between like 20 to 75% of the book, wasn't great. It was, you know, if you're in it for the smut, then you're fine, but this was way too smutty for me, and it was just all smut, no plot. And I don't mind a spicy scene, like, don't get me wrong. And some of them were really good, but every chapter just being about the smut, it just really wasn't it for me. So I'm going to be donating this one, and I probably won't pick up the rest of the series, which is a shame. Then I also read this book. So this is The Film and Coffee Shop, and I love a translated fiction. Anything to do with cats as well. I feel like a lot of the translated fictions are to do with cats. So we'll prescribe you a cat. The Blanket Cats. The Film and Coffee Shop is a coffee shop run by cats. Now, what I thought was really interesting is these guys are the planets. It's all about astrology. So it's one that I haven't really dove into before. So this is all about astrology, and the cats are actually like Mercury and Venus in like cat form, and they provide you meals that they think that would relate to your current situation and help you make tough decisions and prompt you in the right way of life. And it's beautiful. So it was stunning. I don't really have much more to say. It was beautiful, and these always get me, and I always think, oh, they're so easy to read, I'm never gonna cry, and then it gets to the end and I'm sobbing. Every time. So this was a 5-star read for me. Okay, let's talk about fantasy, because I had so many fantasy books this month, and we started off with a couple of dragon books. So we have The Language of Dragons by SF Williamson. This was great. This was a 3-star read. I believe if there is going to be a second one, I might pick it up. I don't know if it's going to be a standalone or if it's going to be a second one. It is not a romantasy. There is a tiny, tiny element of romance, but it's very political. It is actually sheds a lot of information on political viewpoints that can be interpreted in the current sort of standing today. I'll leave it at that. But it is very, very good. And for a YA, it's actually quite dark. I think it's a YA. I think it's marketed as a YA, but it is quite dark. But I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. It is about a girl who can speak all of these different languages, and we've got like the dragons and the human government. And there's this really interesting exam that you take whenever you reach like a certain age, and if you fail the exam, then you're like demoted to like a lower class of person, and you have to go live in the slums. And at the very start of the book, our main character's parents, they get arrested for aiding the rebels, and she's like, what do you mean? Like, my parents they almost to the point of, I suppose trigger warning here, but abuse. They almost abused her so that she would understand why being demoted to third class is such a bad thing. And then her parents ended up working with the rebels in the third class, and they get arrested, and she goes and she joins almost this like school with her cousin and a couple of other kids, and they are trying to master the war. Basically, they would need to come up with these ideas that means they're going to master the war for the Prime Minister. And there's like languages, so trying to work out like what languages the dragons are speaking. There's one to do with flight, there's one to do with like breeding and things. But it's really interesting, and I did cry towards the end, and it's also set in London, I believe. So yeah, I would recommend this book 100%. Okay, dragon book number 2. I finally picked up When the Moon Hatched. This is a beautiful copy, by the way. My friend Olivia picked this up for me in Waterstones, and this was on my list of books that I wanted to read in January. My TBR jar picked this for me. So if you haven't seen my TBR jar picks my February reads yet, go and check that out. So When the Moon Hatched, it is a romantasy, and it is beautiful. Now, I saw a lot of information on, I don't know whether it was like TikTok or YouTube, but a lot of people really struggle with all the names and the places. I actually did not find it that difficult, and I can get confused with lines and places. So if you're worried about picking it up because it looks really hefty, I definitely would give it a go. I don't think there are any words in here that shouldn't be there. It doesn't drag out, and it gives you just enough information to know everything that's going on without lacking anything. It is... So one of my gripes with a previous dragon book that I read, Through the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling, was that we almost got snippets and snapshots of what was going on in the world at that moment. We didn't actually get a lot of context, and this is a context-filled book. You learn about the lore, the history, why things are the way they are, what people think of the future. You learn about people that you haven't actually met yet in this book. So I am so excited for the second one. I actually managed to damage the back of the book. You can be able to see it's kind of scratched. However, it is beautiful, and it was a 5-star read. I cannot wait until the next one. I'm so excited. Okay, so we have Crown of Midnight. I also tabbed this book. It is fully tabbed. This was for the podcast. So if you don't know yet, I have a podcast with 2 of my besties, Crimson and Molly. It is called Faefic and Fiction, and at the moment we are working through the mass verse, everything. All of Throne of Glass, all of ACOTAR, all of Crescent City. We are going to go through one by one, and every 3 weeks, starting on the 8th of April, we're dropping an episode on a particular book or a part of a particular book. So the Throne of Glass episode is coming up on April 8th, and then 3 weeks later we will have Crown of Midnight, and we're actually going to be filming it this week. So we are going to be discussing Crown of Midnight, and I, as I've said in a previous video, purchased with my Christmas money from my parents, so thanks Mum and Dad, all of the hardbacks of Throne of Glass and all of the hardbacks of ACOTAR. That was like my Christmas gift this year from my parents, and I had such a nice time going through and tabbing everything, and I chose such beautiful colours tabs. I feel like they're very pastel-y, which is not the vibe of the book at all. I always feel like So I love Throne of Glass, but Crown of Midnight is actually a 4-star book for me, not a 5-star, but the rest of them are 5-star. And it's because I always forget what happens in this book until the very end. I don't really know why, I just feel like it's not as memorable as the others, but I had a really good time reading it and I cannot wait to film the episode as well. The sun is starting to come in. It's looking very nice over here right now. So let's talk about the second to last book. I actually need to take my bookmark out because I finished it this morning, and that is Silver in the Bone. So I read Silver in the Bone for the first time at the end of 2023, and the second book, which is called The Mirror of Beasts, actually came out last year, and I got it on pre-order. It arrived and then I never picked it up, but I realized whenever I opened it that I really needed to reread this one before reading Mirror of Beasts. So I didn't really want to read it, so I've actually been picking up audiobooks for rereads recently. I find that audiobooks for a reread are so much nicer because you already know the story, sort of. You already know the characters. It's easy to get into it and sort of like remember what happened, rather than sometimes I find that if you use an audiobook first time you can't picture what's happening. So Silver in the Bone is a kind of like a King Arthur retelling, sort of. It is about a group of people called Hollowers, and Hollowers are basically thieves. So not witches, but sorcerers and sorceresses will employ them to find mythical objects, and this is about a girl and her brother. And their guardian, Nash, whenever sort of 7 years before this book is set, disappeared. They think that he left them, essentially. And they have been trying to play catch up and live their lives ever since. So they joined the Guild of the Hollowers. So we've got Tamsin and Cabell, and Tamsin is, I don't want to say afraid of life, but she's very afraid of losing the people around her after obviously her father figure Nash disappeared. And they end up searching for this relic, and she joins forces with Emrys, and Emrys is like this rich guy's son. He's very privileged. He grew up in a very privileged family. Their family has a reputation, and she hates him. So of course we've got like a little bit of an enemies to lovers in there, but there's not an awful lot of romance. It's mainly focused on the plot, and it is beautiful. They end up in Avalon, the Lost Isle of Avalon, and they end up meeting the priestesses there and trying to sort of fix the Isle of Avalon because it's become cursed. So it's absolutely wonderful. This is when they go, they're doing this to search for a treasure they've been told to find, which is the Ring of Dispel, and it's really good. 5-star, and I loved it so much on the reread. I loved it almost more, if not the same as I did the first time I read it. So I would pick this one up, and I'm so excited because in March I am going to pick up Mirror of Beasts. So the last book on the list, and I don't actually have a copy of, but it is Legally Binding by Sophie Snow. Now this is probably my favourite book that I read in February, and it is a 5-star, a 6-star, 10, 12, 100-star read for me. It was absolutely fantastic. So Sophie is a Scottish spicy romance author, and she loves queer romance, she loves age gap romance. So this is about a lawyer and his assistant. So we've got Maggie and Cal, and there is a little bit of an age gap there, but it's all about how they navigate that, and it's not icky. We actually had Sophie on the podcast, so when this video goes up, the podcast episode will be live, but we actually amazingly had Sophie come on the podcast and talk about her books. So I read this one, and the next one in the series is False Confidence, and I'm so excited to read that. She also has The Rule of 3, and she has Naughty or Nice, which is like a little Christmas romance. So I'll be reading that in December, but I would heavily recommend checking out Sophie's books. They're wonderful, and if you want to go and listen to us chat to her as well over on the podcast, feel free to do so. We had such a good time, and I cannot wait to read the next multiple books in her series. Let's talk, before I get blinded by the sun, let's have a chat about the books I actually didn't enjoy as much this month. I DNF'd 2 books this month, and one of my goals for this year, it's that if I don't like a book and I'm not vibing with a book, and I want to DNF it, I can DNF it. Whether it's going to be a soft DNF or I'm never going to go back to it, it doesn't matter. I am more focused on finding really good books this year that I really enjoy, rather than sticking with a book and not reading anything and being in a slump when I finish it because I didn't enjoy it. So the first book that I DNF'd this month was 5 Broken Blades. I probably read about 30% of this book. It just wasn't for me. I do like a multiple POV book, but I feel like this one just took the cake a little bit. It just, I don't know, I just didn't vibe with it. I can't even really tell you what happened. I know that they're trying to kill the king and there's multiple people, and it's a shame because Rebecca Roanhorse said that she really liked it. It's on she's the author on the front giving a little, oh, this is really good. I just didn't like it, so I'm going to be donating this one. And the second one I'm so sad about, and I don't know whether this is going to be a soft DNF or whether I'm actually going to go back to this one, but it is Cruel is the Light by Sophie Clark. It kind of gave Shadowhunter vibes. So it's about there's a current war, and it's a war between the exorcists and the demons, and it is quite political, and I feel like there are plot points that I can see are coming that we just haven't really gotten to yet. But I would say I probably got about 50-60% through this, and I just wasn't loving it. I never wanted to pick it up. I found that I wasn't reading anything because I didn't want to read this, and that's just not how I want to spend my year. I don't want to do that. Now, the cover itself is beautiful, and part of me, I think I'm probably going to keep the actual book itself because I might go back to it eventually. 5 Broken Blades I'm definitely donating, but I might go back to this one eventually. But at the moment it's a 2-star read, and it's a shame because this was one of my highly anticipated releases for this year, but I didn't enjoy it, which is sad. So those were all of the books that I read in February this year. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. So I read 8 books in February. One of them was digital on my Kindle, one of them was an audiobook, and then 6 of them were physical copies. And then I DNF'd 2. So I did kind of reach my quota of about 10 books a month, even though I DNF'd 2 of them. I still picked up 10, and that's absolutely fine. I'm excited for March reads. I will be reading Assassin's Blade and Heir of Fire in March. I will also be reading the second book in the Silver and the Bone trilogy, so that's 3 already. But I am super excited because we also have the new Elsie Silver book coming out this month, which is super exciting. But I'm really excited to see what I get up to and what I read this month. So before I get blinded by the sun, although this is beautiful, it makes for a really nice setup, I think. Thank you so much for watching. If you don't know what to comment, please comment what you would like to read in the month of March or one of your favourite books from the month of February. I love chatting about books. Please message me, please send me a comment. You can find all of my links down below. I'm really active on Instagram if you want to come and chat there. And thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. I would love to have you. And I will see you all in another video. Bye!